From the 80s into the 90s, TV personality and stand-up comedian Jim Varney starred in a series of full-length movies, all centered around his most well-known and loved character, Ernest, getting into a variety of different goofy situations. Everything from ending up in the slammer to helping Santa Claus himself save Christmas. But what about when Ernest P. Worrell was faced with children's snatching trolls? Does it truly live up to its name, or is it smarter than it seems? Without further ado, this is my review of Ernest Scared Stupid. The movie starts off with an honestly pretty entertaining bit of opening credits, featuring Varney himself and clips from various black and white horror films. Yeah, this is our pyrotechnician, Steve. Honestly, I don't know who the fuck that is. We're then taken on a trip back to the 19th century where a terrifying creature that's been stealing children from the village has been captured. The plan is to bury the sucker under an oak tree to trap him.
One with your blood in his veins will release me, and victory will at last be mine!
Much like Hocus Pocus, we pole vault to modern times where Elizabeth, played by Shay Astor, is giving a report on this event.
That's bull. It's not bull. I read it in a book.
And since you clearly don't read books, that means I've got the upper hand here. Speaking of history and the importance of it, wasn't there a curse that creature spewed out?
From that moment on, Phineas's descendants would get dumber and dumber and dumber.
So we should pray that Ernest never has kids. Got it. Then again, we may not have to spend too much time praying for that.
If their IQs were any lower, they'd be plants.
That is a direct hate crime against my ficus, sir. On the bright side, Ernest is a living cartoon, so his life is never truly in danger. Since Ernest isn't dead yet and doesn't require a hospital visit, he's sent out to what's known as the Hackmore Place, by Sheriff Binder, played by Daniel Butler. The irony is he went on to host America's Dumbest Criminals. The Hackmore property is absolutely covered in what I would describe as metal expressionist art. It's all owned by Old Lady Hackmore, played by the late Eartha Kitt. Ernest wisely does not haul it all away in his garbage truck. Not that he had much of a choice. Elsewhere in town, Elizabeth, Kenny, played by Austin Nagler, and Joey, played by Alec Clapper, are working on their haunted house for Halloween. Unfortunately, the Murdoch brothers, played by Nick Victory and Richard Wolfe, destroy it in typical terrorizing bully fashion. Kenny goes to Ernest with this problem. Poor choice on his part, honestly. So Ernest proceeds to act as an entire thespian friend group. Obviously, this doesn't provide much advice. So he and the kids venture into the woods in search of the best tree to build a defensive treehouse in. Take a wild guess as to which one they chose.
This is a tree to die for.
Guess we gotta give it a try. No guts, no glory.
No stupid, no story. Or, consequences.
Observe.
Return this evil from whence it came.
See? Another good reason for Ernest never to have sex. The first thing he nails unleashed an evil being. Lady Hackmore fulfills her duty as the old crone dispensing ominous warnings, and is promptly followed by Ernest, who assumes she's upset because they might be on her property. In their absence, the Murdoch brothers return to enact bullying phase 2. Only this time, Kenny, Elizabeth, and Joey are prepared. The Murdochs have rocks, and they have wet food and old pizzas. Ernest returns and tells the kids what Hackmore told him about this troll, who's apparently named Trantor.
He can only be awakened on the night before Halloween,
Like tonight.
when a Worrell
Like you.
places his hand on a tree like this and says,
Yea, I call thee forth, Trantor.
Trantor's curse works because Ernest does exactly what is necessary to summon him from his eternal slumber.
Boy, I sure hope you're from Keebler.
Apparently, Trantor, played by Jonas Moscartolo, has little interest in Ernest, though. Instead, he pays a visit to Joey as he's making his way home.
Hey, I gotcha.
Thanks, Ernest. You saved me. I thought I was a goner.
What? And I say this with my entire heart. The fuck? Ernest doesn't waste time in going to the sheriff to warn him, but
The sheriff doesn't believe him.
So you've heard this one before.
You're cursed. Now you're rubbing it off on me.
Hang on now.
Little garlic. Perhaps a silver bullet.
It's like looking into my future.
You are the great redneck hope.
great redneck hope. Troll alert! This is not a drill!
Hey, Paul Revere did the same fucking thing. On a side note, I'm 100% gonna give this a try next time I need to convince someone to do something. This is really tense, huh? How about a break provided by Tom and Bobby Tulip, played by Bill Burge, and the late John Cadenhead?
Cut, Bobby, cut! Can't you see we are engaged in mass communication here?
I say the same thing to my family when they interrupt me while I'm recording. Like a true salesman, Tom takes advantage of Ernest's problem. I do have to ask just how bad the wages of garbage men have gotten. Since the early 90s, if Ernest has no problem affording an over $1,000 shopping list, Elizabeth and Kenny go searching for Joey at the treehouse, and find him? He's an action figure now, minus the action. They seek safety at Hackmore's house where Ernest happens to be. I gotta say, I love how they must have told Eartha Kitt, we need you to portray a batshit woman who's lived on her own for decades and knows everything about the supernatural. And she said, say less. Ernest sets a trap and Kenny goes looking for his father to enlist him to help. At the same time, everyone in town is going to a Halloween party, except for Elizabeth. You know, for someone so low to the ground and with such short legs, this troll really gets around.
He's not it. Over here, Kenny.
Oh, hell no!
On the bright side, Ernest seems to have caught the troll. My hopes are not high. Oof. So that's, kidnapping, child endangerment, and all with a public official's kids. Doesn't mean that Ernest is just gonna give up, though, and neither is Trantor.
Watch out, Bobby!
I'm starting to think Lady Hackmore was right. Our best shot is Ernest because he's clearly indestructible. No time to waste though, so Hackmore and Ernest go to the Halloween party, since that's the most likely place a troll who treats kids like Pokemon will be. Shockingly, this confrontation goes about as well as the last one. Terrible news here because not only does Trantor now have the final wooden boy needed to raise his troll army, but he decided to go for bonus points with his evil status.
Rim shot.
Listen, I know this is a kid-friendly movie here, but I think Ernest should be allowed to make some troll mincemeat. While the adults rally against Trantor, Kenny figures out a key component to defeating Trantor. Milk! Apparently. So he and the rest of the kids, or rather what's left, stock up before heading to the cursed tree. It's a good thing too, because the adults got nothing going for them with the myriad of trolls that have sprouted up. This is like the residents of Mayberry being dropped into an episode of The X-Files. With the kids and Ernest's efforts, the trolls are reduced to a smoking pile of slime. However, Trantor has pulled some demonic shit and leveled up, which means that the milk trick doesn't work anymore.
Oh my god! They've killed Kenny! You bastards!
Ernest does figure out what he can use instead of milk, though, and that is, and I quote, unconditional love, which translates to treating Trantor like a lost puppy. Why would I complain when it works? I imagine that any evil force that believed that they were invincible was treated like this, it would result in the same thing. So all the children that were turned to wood are just fine again, including a few that were taken during old lady Hackmore's childhood. Oh, and of course Rimshot is fine too. So happy ending! If there's one thing this movie has taught me, it's that trolls are lactose intolerant. The special effects, primarily practical, are pretty damn good. It's not hard to see Trantor and the rest of the trolls as legitimate scary things. We have the Chiodo brothers, who are also responsible for the killer clowns, to thank for that. And even decades later, they all still look pretty impressive. Jim Varney and Eartha Kitt are delights as always. You watch an Ernest movie for Ernest, no duh, and you get exactly that. Eartha Kitt was a wonderful addition and was obviously having fun. Very few people could rival the chaos and insanity that is Ernest, but she did it with ease. The child actors, while perhaps not fantastic, were fine and not annoying to me. The story/plot, while absolutely ridiculous, is a fun ride. The settings feel like a small town with these areas of supernatural mystery. For however ridiculous it is, there are moments of genuine disconcerting and scary nature. The CGI and digital effects are dated as hell. The acting for most everyone is over the top. There's no tremendously high stakes here, so the tension suffers a bit for that. If someone watches the movie and has no ties to the character of Ernest, they'll likely not enjoy the film too much, and the flaws will be a lot easier to see and get hung up on. The humor is a bit hit or or miss. It depends on taste. With all that being said, I'm giving Ernest Scared Stupid 7.5 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. This is such a nostalgic movie for a number of people, myself included. Ernest in general is a fun and lovable character, and that's all thanks to Jim Varney's charm and dedication. When I first watched this film as a kid, it was part of a double feature with Monster Mash from 2000. I didn't remember much about it other than it was an Ernest P. Worrell movie. Just a handful of years ago, I decided to revisit it with the expectation of it being so goofy I wouldn't like it. The exact opposite ended up being the case. I've heard and seen several people bash Ernest Scared Stupid, saying it's ridiculous, doesn't make any sense, and doesn't even try to be scary. And to that I say, it's a kid's movie. And if certain scenes didn't have you checking under your bed, then you might be a touch desensitized. The title says everything. It's supposed to be completely goofy and stupid. Since so many people call it exactly that, I'd say it succeeded in what it was conceived to be. You have to watch this through the eyes of a kid and drop the critic mindset. That's when it's most enjoyable. Even if so many people hate it or just don't like it, there are still those of us who hold a special place in our hearts for it. I would recommend Ernest Scared Stupid to people who would like to share something fun and mildly scary with their kids. Those who are looking for a nostalgic film for the season, people who prefer laughs over real harsh scares, and anyone who wants to know what it takes to be Troll Fighter #1. See you later.